And so take busy off the table. The question is, what percentage of your time are you doing something you don't like doing?
Hello and welcome to the Automate and Delegate Podcast. What should you not be doing in life, business, and building relationships? Every episode is high takeaway value with tips, tools, and stories you can implement today. Now to your host, Brad Stevens, lifetime entrepreneur, global speaker, and high performance expert.
Well, hey, everybody, thanks again for joining us on another episode of Automate and Delegate, where we are all about helping you figure out what you should not be doing when it comes to relationships, business, and personal development. And excited to have our guest on today, fellow entrepreneur. And I mean, you could not get a more picture-perfect definition of someone restructuring their life and the impact it's had by automating and delegating. And it's led him all over the world and adventure racing. I mean, it's Chip Dodd is an adventurer, an entrepreneurial enthusiast, a keynote speaker. For those of you can't see, I mean, even the background, he's got a bike behind us, some in the jungle somewhere on our video background here. But he, he's a successful entrepreneur, has a company which he'll kind of dive into, but also does adventure races through his organization called This Ability, which is kind of cool, and he'll share a little bit on the purpose of that. And then brag on them a little bit. They actually got 8th in the nation for their adventure team race, and even in the middle of COVID. So some cool things that he'll share, and just how he's really transformed his life and his approach to business and scaling personally and professionally, with some great key takeaways for us. So thanks for joining us, Chip. So if you want to just share a little bit more background about yourself and kind of what you're up to these days, and also kind of the purpose behind what you're doing. People usually have a bigger why behind it, and love to hear it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. And Automate and Delegate has changed my life and the tools that you talk about and others. And so I am happy to do whatever I can to help other entrepreneurs or business leaders lead the lifestyle that they want through not doing stuff, right? So I'll start off, I guess, as who am I? I would call myself a vagabond adventurer. That's deep down. That's who I am as a person. I do happen to have a day job. My company, Support Services of Virginia, supports people with intellectual and developmental disabilities all across Virginia. So think things like Down syndrome, autism, cerebral palsy, things like that. So basically, we kind of work for Medicaid. We're like a contractor. So Medicaid pays us. We hire, train, and deploy staff into people's homes. This could be foster care homes. It could be group homes, day support locations. We also do therapeutic consultation. So we're a pretty large outfit with a couple hundred employees and foster care families. And so it's really amazing work to see people, maybe they come out of an institutional setting and this is their first time really living in the community. And so we help them live amazing lives in their community of their choice. They might live by themselves, they might live with family, the full gamut. So it's very rewarding work, but as you could imagine from being paid by Medicaid, it's very low margin work. So you have to love it or you should get out. And then with that, there's a handful of other companies that I own as well that complements that company. We do provide housing for people with disabilities, and we also provide payee services for people with disabilities who need help managing their own money. And my most recent company, thanks to automating and delegating, I just launched an adventure racing company that does virtual adventure races, because when COVID hit, all the races on the calendar blew up. Nobody could get permits. And I saw an opportunity. I was like, hell, I'm going to launch another company. Which I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't have the skills of Automate and Delegate. So that's kind of the full gamut of all of the entrepreneurial stuff. But I would say a lot of my time now is being spent on this adventure race company, which is where I really am passionate about. But they're really, if you notice, I think it's good for everybody to kind of have a purpose, a thing kind of above themselves, or at least a goal. And so went through one of these EO entrepreneurs organization does a lot of learning events, and I went through one that they want you to have like a personal mission statement, and I ended up with realize success by helping others realize theirs, and I apply that through all the companies, because if you think with people with disabilities, first you start off, well, if I can help this person with autism learn to interact with others and gain a community, their life's better. But it is a company. So I'm growing my company by helping these people live better lives. But then we're also helping our employees if we hire somebody, I might take somebody who has a high school diploma and I got them all the way to where they have a career in this field. I made their life better as well. And then with Adventure Racing, helping people have a COVID safe outdoor experience that may be even life-changing for them. So basically everything I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out a way that I can back myself into a lifestyle where I can realize my success by helping others out.
No, that's fantastic. And it's a common theme, especially we interview a lot of EOers, entrepreneurs organization. And when it comes down to purpose, and I think as entrepreneurs get older too, they move towards this idea of significance more, right? It's like, how can I have more of an impact on others? And as entrepreneurs, it's how do I keep my own boat afloat a lot of times in our 20s and trying to be focused. But once you get a chance to have visibility, it's really a bigger picture, how can impact others in the journey. And to be a professional vagabond by 2031, right? Is that what you're sharing? Is
absolutely full-time vagabond by 2031 is my goal. It's on a Post-it note on my monitor to keep me focused.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it. Well, we'll dive in real quick. And as you know, this episode, these are all about, high takeaway value, things you can listen to and immediately, apply after the episode here. Sharing Chip's own journey and dealing with challenges related to scale and growing. So, we'll dive into three, specific challenges here. We'll spend about 5 minutes on each one. And we'll let Chip kind of just spell out for us what's the challenge he's been, kind of dealt with from a scale and a growth standpoint. And what's the specific tool, resource, mindset, framework that you kind of use to go on the other side. And to the extent you have any kind of specific KPIs or measurables that you've had because of it, it'd be great to share if you have that. So why don't we dive into the first one? What's the first one you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into this because there's so many. We could do a 2-hour podcast. I wanted to share ones that I think are most impactful and provide the most takeaway value.
Thank you.
So let me start off with, and I think other entrepreneurs will see this, that if they have some type of regulation or oversight entity, there ends up becoming a lot of administrative burden and paperwork. I call it non-unit producing from my old McDonald's days. And so I realized that all of a sudden I've got all of this administrative burden to support these people with disabilities. And so I'm paying all of these admins and the money should really be going to the person doing the work. But meanwhile, I'm paying more and more people. And so admins started getting bloated. And so I realized, technology is one way to solve that, right? So that's on the Automate side of the house. And so really it started when Zuckerberg and Facebook was going public. I can't remember, I think I was listening to Bloomberg, but everybody's talking about them going public. And meanwhile, he's saying, we need to get off PC and we need to go mobile. Mobile is the future.
Yeah. And
if we don't change to mobile, we're going to be dead. And that resonated with me. And I can't remember, I think it was 2012, 2011 when they went public. And from then on out, I said, you know what? SSVA needs to be digital. We need to go mobile. We need to go cloud. And if you can't do your job from your cell phone, then Chip's screwing up. And so we took that and basically, started, of course, EO uses Zoom for a lot of their communications. They also use things like Slack and Same Page. So we started incorporating a lot of those type of digital productivity tools so that we could automate things. That made work from home even possible. This is way before COVID. I immediately was like, my company is spread out across Virginia. I've got 4 divisions. They're 4 hours apart from each other. It's like running 4 companies, they completely have admin and HR and finance and all of that in each of these divisions. So really,
a lot of duplicated overhead. You're saying as far as duplication
totally
is happening. Yeah.
Yep. This is a high turnover. Kind of a lower paid because again, Medicaid doesn't pay me much. So we have a lot of turnover in entry-level employees, a lot of training. So there's a lot of manpower involved in that churn. But once we started adopting Zoom and all of these digital capabilities, that really, it just improved so much. I mean, digital health records, for example, and digital HR records and all of that. So really the switch from paper over to digital was one of them. And then as we went through that digital transformation, we also realized, like with Office 365, as we started moving into that ecosystem, I could start consolidating because like we were using Basecamp for a while. It's like, why am I using Basecamp? Yeah. I could just use Teams. I'm already paying for it. So it's like, first get digital. Well, I don't know, the Office 365 wasn't a thing when we did that. So I was kind of stuck with a hodgepodge of vendors. And then as we started going into Office 365, I was able to start consolidate and really lower the cost on that. Of course, people do have pushback. Nobody likes change. People like using paper and blah, blah, blah. And so we went through those things. But I'm really glad we did because when COVID hit, it was like, everybody go home. The company still runs. Like basically, The only thing that was a little bit of a hassle, QuickBooks, is we have QuickBooks Enterprise. I can't get away. We're too complicated for QuickBooks Online. So I needed to use Log Me In for the home workers to log into the network and get on QuickBooks Enterprise. So we haven't really solved that yet. I'm sure NetSuite or something could solve that problem. So that's the one big one, was like, I'm a fan of Office 365. Some people use Google. There's NetSuite. There's other technology out there, but just rip that Band-Aid off and get it done, and take advantage of the lull. Don't wait till you're on fire and everything's going crazy. But if with the second there's a lull, have that. Okay, now's when we need to switch to get off of Exchange and get over to 365 in the cloud. So that would be my first one.
Well, part of what I'm hearing too, I mean, it started with you're kind of having your ear to the ground from that news story you heard or interview with Zuckerberg back in 2012. Is like, it was, first of all, that's the one key thing as an entrepreneur, is having your ear to the ground, is where is the puck going on the ice? So constantly having your ear to the ground of where things moving, and that resonated with you, right? As far as mobile, and it's just, I've got to go in this, in this direction. And I think that's a key attribute of an entrepreneur, is you got to be listening. Where's the puck going on the ice, so you can get ahead of the curve, so that when challenges do happen, people hear me, I always quote Jim Collins a ton. I'm knee deep in a bunch of Jim Collins stuff right now. And, in his book, I think Great by Choice, he talks about the concept of luck. And he says, when we looked and studied all the companies that were successful, every company had the same amount of good or bad luck. It was just ones that were prepared got a higher return on that luck, or more detriment because of that luck. And so, COVID is a bad luck scenario, if you will, that came, but because you had already been moving in that direction, you were able to kind of even take advantage and be positioned, for it when it kind of came. That's great. Zoom, Office 365, any other specific technology tools that you guys are integrating that's been a part of that ecosystem for you that's really helped move in digital?
So with that frame, I'm going to answer a question, but the one more framework is, and that for me, that was transformational. Don't look at, like, let's say, a digital health record system or a HR system or Zoom or Teams or whatever. Don't just think of it as just software, but really it's, how does a company communicate? And that's where, in the old days, let's say, there's a lot of email, like it was all email. And so I would say, if you look at it from the most impact that technology's had affecting our communication, I would say Teams is probably the one that did the most. It started with Basecamp, because I wasn't into Teams yet, because we hadn't really migrated to Office 365. But now that I'm in Teams, and everything I do is basically needs to be HIPAA compliant.
Right.
So Teams was a little bit, Basecamp was a little bit limited because we weren't allowed to share customer information. So once I got into Teams, now it's in the ecosystem. It's integrated with SharePoint and the calendars, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa, our lives just got really easier. And now it's like, how do we wean everybody off of email?
Right.
Stop using email for internal comm. And so that's the one I would say made the most difference, is Teams.
Gotcha.
Or the equivalent of just get one of those type of platforms that has documents, conversations, and you can wean yourself off of email.
So fine, if you can, to the extent, Teams, I think I've been hearing a lot more about, is it's done a good job of consolidating into one platform. So you don't have this Frankenstein amalgam of 19 different tech platforms, where you kind of consolidate together. And the other thing I think you shared, though, and I completely agree, is ultimately ask the questions, how do we communicate? Before you touch a single tech tool or resource, really, how do we communicate? Kind of study the communication patterns within your organization, then overlay the technology that's going to be a best fit with what your needs are.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Awesome.
Our
Great
digital
share.
health records, our digital health record system is another line of communication, not the corporate level, HR, finance, all that, but from the person out there doing the work to their supervisor and to the clinician that's kind of overseeing it. Yeah. That digital health records platform is a communication platform. So I would say if anybody's in a field where you need that proprietary kind of different thing that Teams won't work, look at it as a communication tool first before you purchase the software, right? Because it comes down to features and all of that. It's if you're using it for comm, that is one of the most important. So.
Gotcha. And I would encourage anybody. Chip is a guru, and he does a lot of speak on this as well, and a lot of domain expertise. If you're in a space that has sensitive information, whether it's health or financial, he's done a lot of work in this space. And we'll share all his contact info. It'll be in the show notes as well. You can kind of reach out direct. He's always happy to answer questions where that's concerned. Awesome. Well, that was packed with a lot of great stuff. All right, well, let's jump to the second. What's the second big challenge?
Jump to the second one. Okay, we're going to stay on the same basic problem, is back office administrative, non-productive stuff. and what I learned, and this, I got to admit, I'm one of your raving fans. For some background, I, like many entrepreneurs, have read Tim Ferriss's book, 4 Hour Work Week. And I was like, holy crap, that's awesome. And meaning the delegation part of it. And I looked into it and I asked other entrepreneurs and I just couldn't get myself over the hump. And then I would go to an EO conference and I'd see Jack Daly standing up there and he'd yell at us because he's always yelling at you. And he would say, if you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant. And so I lived with that guilt for 5 or 7 years or whatever, because I couldn't figure it out. And I knew I needed to. And then
you wiped the spit off your face from Jack.
Yes. So you had to wipe
get in the Shamu front splash aisle in the front of a Jack Daly event.
Yes. But I need it. Some entrepreneur, we need somebody yelling at us like,
yeah, I agree.
But do this, do it now, knock off the excuses. And I'm embarrassed to say I didn't do it. And really the holdup I had was, we obviously in my field, I care about people, right? And so although I loved the idea of getting, let's just call it labor from, in his book, he did India.
Right.
But obviously there's worldwide labor pool. But I couldn't figure out a way to do it where I felt like the people would be taken care of and it was a real job and it could be really part of my team. And so, so I know this isn't an OA commercial, but when I met you, you're an EO member, you're in Atlanta. I was like, okay, this is it. Now I know somebody, I trust them. I can use workers from the Philippines, which, a lot of places in the world have awesome workers. The Philippine workers matched my organization's culture, the language and everything. And so, I tested out getting a VA for myself because my company was very reluctant. They do not like the idea of offshoring. We're taking away American jobs, all the normal stuff. And I was like, screw it. I'm doing it myself with my own money and my own companies that are separate in my big company. And then I started using her. Her name's Kathleen and she's amazing. I started using her to help some of my other employees. That's when they were like, I want a Kathleen, she's awesome. Like that. I gave her a task and it was done in like 10 minutes. Like, and she just runs circles around them. So that's my next big epiphany. And what happened with just me getting my own VA and kind of testing it as proof of concept, then I was like, okay, this is perfect because Medicaid doesn't pay me much. And so this isn't about SSVA being profitable and making money and growing and all that. This was about, I want to pay my direct support worker, the person out there working with the person with the disability. Right now, like the average wage in the States, like $11 an hour. It's pathetic. It should be 15 or 20. These people are heroes. They're making difference in people's lives with disabilities, but our government, federal and state, doesn't value the work that they're doing. And I was looking at this. If I can get this tedious, time-consuming, non-productive back office work done at the most affordable price, then that frees up money that I can then give to the worker that's out there making a difference in somebody's life with a disability. But I didn't want it to be the person doing it isn't living a good life either, right?
Right.
And so what you helped me do was thread that needle to say, I want the people doing the work to have a fair wage in their community. They can live a good life. They can provide for their family and have a job and an employer that treats them with dignity and respect. Meanwhile, reducing my back office admin so I can make a change in people's lives with disabilities. So how did that manifest itself? I ended up, I took my head of HR and I got them a VA to back them up, right? We're talking HR reports and tracking and all of that. My trainer has a VA that backs her up. It's a completely, I almost do it by database. So QuickBooks, I've got a finance VA that's got a degree in finance and she's helping the controller and knocking out all of that type of stuff. Got the HR database, so doing all the HR stuff. We've got my training database because we use Moodle, which is a learning management system. And so we have a VA dedicated to back up that team. And then we've got a clinician person that backs up my clinical team, which is a whole digital health record system looking at customer stuff. And then my next is I'm probably going to, recruitment is one of our biggest problems. And so we're in the middle of trying to hire a recruiter, and I'll probably immediately back them up with a recruitment VA that can then help them track employees. So I would say, we're a pretty big outfit with a couple hundred employees. So it's not everybody's got that much back office admin. But basically, I'm taking every little silo in the company, and I'm taking that person where I want their mind solving problems or making relationships or developing systems and processes, and then have them I used a good word earlier, I can't remember, but it was like having them supported by a VA that once they got the process done, they can pass it off to the VA and they can work on the next process. And so, so that would be the big epiphany that I've had over, I guess it's been a year and a half. And believe it or not, I got, this is on my desk. I know for those of you who can't see it, this is the medal I got from Expedition Africa on Rodrigues Island in 2019. And I have this on my desk because this was like the best day of my life, crossing that finish line with a team of 4 people. And I remember that I first got Kathleen. I was like, I'm going to Africa. I need a VA because I'm going to be out of the country for like a month, and stuff's got to not grind to a halt. And so I keep that on my desk. But so she's backed me up personally on everything, and then the other VAs are dedicated to each people on my team. So that was a long answer to a short question, I think. But
no, man, but it's great. I mean, for people, what you just shared was a journey that a lot of people don't know where to start, you know, and like you said, it's something, and there's a lot of people, it's a common theme out there when it comes to outsourcing and VAs. And, you know, I mean, whether you use a firm like ours or otherwise, you know, it's independent of that. It's just a mindset shift, you know, and a lot of people have read the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week, but it was, how do I make that ultimate, you know, shift? And the crawl, walk, run mentality. It's like, well, let me do it myself and build confidence. Cause you're right. You know, a lot of times that, you know, team members, you know, they shoot it down either because they're concerned it could potentially, you know, compromise their job, right? Or they don't have confidence in it, or they had a friend at another company that did it and it was a bad experience. People have all these preconceived components in their head. So what I'm hearing back from you is you finally made the plunge. You kind of did it personally for yourself to kind of understand it, to prove it to yourself, to establish that confidence, right? And then your team saw it around you. And I've heard that story. Actually, another good colleague of mine, same thing, right? He was in an industry that had a, you know, a little bit of an older kind of workforce, and started that process. They were all, no, this isn't going to work. You know, and fast forward 12 months, all of a sudden they're all asking for one, right? It's like, oh, this works. And once they establish how it works, it can completely shift the, you know, approach. And it's about elevating those people. Because if you've got an employee who's a good strategic thinker and adds value and is a good culture fit, you don't ever want to lose those. Those are hard to find, right? You just want to take those people and elevate them to their highest return on time. And the other, you know, benefit, like you've seen, is from a culture standpoint, when they can wake up every day and do the stuff they love doing, right? It's amazing. Their job satisfaction goes up, and therefore they produce a better, you know, ultimate service for, you know, for clients. So it's interesting, these additional compound effects that it can have when you audit your team, get them elevated to their highest return on time, and then the kind of ripple effect it can have through. So now I think it's great.
It could be a retention tool. 'Cause I'm thinking, let's say I'm the head of training in a company. I got my own VA that's backing me up, even though that other company's offering me an extra $1 an hour. But do I have my own VA like, that I can then outsource 40 hours of work to that I don't want to do, that's tedious or whatever? And so I think it's a retention tool as well. I mean, I know if I start taking away VAs, they would lose their minds and quit.
Now, once you get a taste of the drug, if you will, it's you know, but because it's just truly, just like you've experienced, and why I'm so passionate about this and this whole industry, is it changed my entire life. Like, especially going to something like COVID, it's like having this magic toolbox. And once you really mentally embrace this world, how to leverage it, how to appropriately engage it, I mean, you feel invincible. There's not a problem or crisis you can't get through if you know how to kind of, you know, leverage these resources. So that's awesome. And ultimately allowing you to do personally what your passions are as well. I think I remember, actually, you were doing that project. We had an EO event going on in Charleston. I remember that was the first one of the projects with Kathleen. Like, you had to get like every single restaurant in Charleston, you need to find out like which ones had rooms that could meet for my EO events. And like, she put together a whole spreadsheet. She data scraped all the restaurants and put together a whole spreadsheet and the images and photos of every restaurant that could have meeting spaces. I remember actually showing.
It is amazing. Like, I love volunteering now. I'm just like, yeah, I'll do that. And I'm like, hey, Kathleen, I need your help.
VAs will make you the best volunteer ever.
Absolutely. Like the meeting minutes, I volunteered on one of the adventure racing things, and I was like, oh, I'll be the secretary, no problem. I recorded it on Zoom, kick it to Kathleen. She comes up with this beautiful document that's better than I would have ever done. And so, yeah, all of my, and we're going to get into this in a second on my third challenge, but
let's jump into it.
Okay, yeah, let's do that, and then I'll talk more about.
Yeah, it sounds like it's awesome. Those are two fantastic ones and some great specific takeaways. So what's the third to close us out here?
So this would be much more applicable to new entrepreneurs. Okay, because obviously the big company is 200 employees. I've already got all this admin and infrastructure, and so I was a lot off the treadmill before I even started doing VAs or technology. Okay, so COVID hits, and I see an opportunity. The adventure racing world, like any other athletic sport, tends to be a mass start, right? Whether you do a marathon or a big bike race or whatever, governments just won't do permits anymore. So all big sports got shut down immediately.
Yeah.
Whatever, Boston Marathon, nope, sorry, we're postponing and everything. And that happened to adventure racing. It went from March 20th or whenever everything got shut down and went to zero. And I like adventure racing. I didn't want it to end. It's an outdoor sport. And so but I saw an opportunity and I was like, you know what? I've been adventure racing a long time. I know how to do this. I know a lot of the adventure race directors. And so I could ask them questions. And I decided, you know what? I think I got an idea. I think I can create a virtual adventure racing company that provides almost the identical experience to adventure racers, minus the 100-person start, right? It's a virtual race. It's not like go into your backyard and run around for 5 miles. I didn't want to do that type of thing. I wanted it to be, I'm putting the course together. You're going to get checkpoints just like you did. You're following the bike path I wanted you to follow. You're crossing the river and paddling or whatever. So I'm developing this amazing experience, but you can do it over a 4-month period of time. Just pick whatever weekend, pick your teammates, go do it, right? So I'm going to send you the maps. Everything's virtual. But obviously starting a whole new company on top of the other handful of companies is like, okay, how much time do I really have? And I would not have done this if I hadn't had Kathleen. So I launched the company, which I think everybody should do. When you launch your company, think, how do I launch this without me doing anything? My job is to create the system and process, not do it. The coach doesn't also sub for the defense and the offense and the quarterback. The coach is supposed to be on the sidelines that telling everybody what to do. So I started the company with that in mind. The only thing I'm allowed to do is the stuff that I am uniquely talented for and want to do, which is run around the woods and design courses that are going to provide an amazing experience for racers. I don't want to deal with the registrations. I don't want to be printing maps. I don't want to mail maps. I just all that beginning and ending back office stuff automated from the beginning. And so basically I set up the process and then slowly but surely trained Kathleen on how to do it. So, racer registers. She says, thanks for your registration. And we put your maps in the mail. I got a guy here locally. He drops the maps in the mail. She says, hey, your maps are there. They'll be there in 3 days. Let me know if you have any questions. And it's like the only thing I'm doing is answering complicated questions that are outside the norm. Yeah. And then I'm designing races. But what I love is I get these emails and they say, oh, we just did your Williams-Burr race. It was so much fun. The family enjoyed it. We had a blast. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. There's the impact again that we're making in people's lives.
So entrepreneurs don't wake up every day wanting to do detailed process?
Yeah. Tedious paperwork and tracking and expenses and income and all that. No. But so but as an entrepreneur, it's two different things to take an existing company and start automating and delegating, but starting it from scratch, knowing that has been an amazing experience. I'm like, this is so cool. Like I'm starting a company and it doesn't suck. Like usually it's like, I hate my life. I'm on the treadmill. I'm the sales guy and I'm also doing payroll and I can't spend any time with my wife. I can't go on vacation. I can't leave the area. And what about the dog? And I was like, nope, not doing it. Full-time vagabond means there's no ties, there's no food in my fridge. It's like Fight Club, man. When this warehouse blows up, there's going to be expired condiments everywhere. And so it's taken me 10 years or so, but I went from that guy with a yard and over to a homeless person who's living out of a cargo van, 120 days a year trying to be full-time. But I couldn't do it without both the tech and then also the VA support, because Medicaid does not pay us enough to have the back office up to standard. I mean, the unfunded mandates they throw at us are just every day it's more and more and more and more. And none of my competitors are doing it. So it gives me an absurd advantage and allowed me to start this new company.
I love you share that. It's in their element. It's an unfair competitive advantage, right? It's an arbitrage situation that people just don't know about. And there's other industries that when I was mentioning before, the guy that's in in a commercial HVAC repair business industry, nobody would think ever that would have have VAs in the Philippines doing things. He's got like 12 to 15 and he is growing faster than everyone in his peers because he's doing things differently on the backside. So, no, but I love this story as far as launching a brand new business. I mean, that's exactly going back to that magic toolbox, right? You had that magic toolbox that you knew kind of, all right, I got the right mindset in there. I got the right tech tools, knowing a VA, and you can bring a business to life, from zero to, life in a couple of weeks for, a fraction of the cost, and getting it running. And that's part of the
Totally.
value of like a situation like a COVID and otherwise, is that, doing that, the confidence it built in you going forward, do it again, bring something to life
Absolutely.
that you wouldn't have, even considered before. And it reduces those barriers. I share a lot of times it's about taking time, money, and knowledge off the table, right? They know
Right.
they're off the table as a constraint point. It's like, well, I don't have enough time to do it. I don't have money to do it, or I don't have the knowledge to do it, right? I'm sure you don't have any deep knowledge about ticketing systems, right? And you certainly didn't have the time on top of everything else.
Right.
From a financial standpoint, it didn't have a ton of financial risk to kind of bring that to life.
Right. And there's that thing called Parkinson's law that basically time expands until the deadline. So if I told you I need this report on my desk by Friday, you will have it by Friday. It's going to take until Friday to do it. I've expanded Parkinson's law to pretty much everything. Basically, all the world's creatures will consume all available resources until an outside force limits that consumption. Admins breed like rabbits. The entrepreneurs will always be busy. We will never be bored. There's always something, some book, something I want to do, some new hobby, some travel. And so take busy off the table. The question is, what percentage of your time are you doing something you don't like doing? Because you're always going to be busy. I want to be riding my mountain bike. I want to be designing courses for adventurous. I want to be living out of a van down by the river full time. So every single time I've got to go by the office, or I've got to do that report or something that I hate, it's wasting my time, I don't like it, I'm trying to figure out how can I get this automated or delegated. But I think that's every entrepreneur always say I'm busy. And so I'm like, no shit, Cheryl. I mean, it's like, that's us. Get over that. What percentage are we doing that we enjoy? And I think that's the standard at which I try to hold myself, is I want to be busy doing stuff I love.
No, I mean, it's contentment. I mean, ultimately from a happiness factor standpoint, it's like, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, your employees, you want the same thing for them, right? What percentage of time can they be spending every single day when their feet hit the ground every day and come work for Support Services Virginia? They know, oh, I get to do the part I like doing. I get to interface with patients. I get to interface with their staff. I get to think about new ideas and strategy. I don't have to go do TPS reports, because somebody else is doing the TPS reports that's good at it, and that's a good use of their, their skill set. So you're getting to hit the ground every day doing what you're passionate about. So that's fantastic. That's a great full circle set of experiences, and really appreciate the thoughtful effort you put into crafting those responses. I think you touched on, no matter who's listening to this, whether it's a startup or a mature business, they can all kind of take things from that set of series. Fantastic, man. Well, let's close out with, always ask our guests to share. There's tons of different elements that make a successful entrepreneur, kind of ultimately, but everybody has a unique perspective that, look, if you could only take one skill set that you could give someone to be a successful entrepreneur as a starting point, what would be that one thing that you would say?
Obviously, from what we've talked about, I'm a little different than your average person. And so you're going to get hopefully a unique response.
Ultimately be a vagabond.
I don't think everybody should be a vagabond. Living out of a van it is what I want. I do not recommend it for anybody. Most people like a house and kids and all the stuff that I don't have. Okay, so this would be the one, no matter who you are, I think you should start with. And well, let me back up. What's traditionally taught to entrepreneurs is like, you got to grow and you got to make profit, you got to make money, which usually ends up manifesting itself into stuff like nice cars, nice houses, big boats, all that stuff, right? And what I realized, that path is holding me back from what I love, right? So my one characteristic for an entrepreneur, or even just a business leader, because I'm sure you have people that are listening that are not entrepreneurs, is clearly define what success looks like, meaning your lifestyle. From the time, I wish somebody told me in high school or college, what lifestyle do you want to live? And let's back your way into a job that you love that allows that lifestyle to be possible. So my lifestyle, I want to be out in the woods running around the mountains. Manhattan would make me want to kill myself. Some people love that city life. So if you want to work in a city, great, be a doctor or a finance person or whatever. All tech companies, right, are based out of big cities, right? Austin or wherever. And so first define, what is the lifestyle that you want? Do you want the house? Do you want to be in the suburbs or whatever? Do you want to be in Virginia, or do you want to be in California or Florida or Maine? It's like, or a different country, go to Sweden, define that first, and then create the business or the create a means of making income that allows you to put yourself into that situation. So it's really, it's what are you talented at, right? You should do that. Don't get yourself into a job that you don't have a skill set you don't like doing. But then where do you want to do it? Who do you want to do it with? All of those questions about happiness, which we just talked about. And once that's clearly defined, it makes business decisions 10 times easier. Should I get another dog or not? Well, I want to live out of a van down by the river. An extra dog is a bad idea, right? Plants are a bad idea. Grass is a bad idea that I have to mow. A boat is a bad idea because now I got to go maintain the boat. So if I would have known that, I would have saved a ton of money and a ton of wasted years doing stuff I didn't like doing. So that's a long answer. I apologize.
No, you're starting with the end in mind, right? It's like, what's your destination? I think there's a quote. I can't remember exactly. I want to look it up. It's the definition of misery is not knowing what makes you happy and trying to pursue it your entire life, right? This is vague concept of like what truly makes me happy and content, as an individual. And you get on the same treadmill you see all your peers doing, you feel like, oh, this should take me to happiness, but don't really have a conversation with yourself. So what is your real happiness? We actually we did a retreat with my forum out to Colorado with Finney and Kelly, who's the former president for Colorado. You would have loved this. We did backcountry skinning with Chris Davenport. It was just phenomenal. But Finn launched a whole business called the Intentionality Compass. And we actually had 3 hours of homework before we went on this retreat. And it was just really, we're all, our early 40s, 50s, pretty, not a spring chicken. We've had some time to think about that, but just even re-indexing now where I am at 41 with a 5-year-old, 18-month-old, what is my purpose and what kind of drives happiness for me? And it kind of shifts. So I think it's good to start with the end in mind and know where your destination is and have a conversation with yourself to get some clarity around it, and then kind of back up your approach to entrepreneurship, or if entrepreneurship isn't the path for you, and you may find in that journey that isn't what you want to do and what is your path ahead. So
also I'd say clearly define happiness on a couple different levels. What does happiness look like day to day? What your morning routine? What time is dinner? What do I do on the weekends? Like that, there's a level of happiness that's just in routine. So I definitely would say define what that looks like, but also like with my Expedition Africa experience, define where you feel most alive. Where is that, like those impactful? When I crossed the finish line of Expedition Africa, it was the hardest, most crazy goal I'd ever put on the calendar. I was in tears, like just, and to this day, it gives me chills. And I'm like, wow. It doesn't matter if, I got a PPP loan. I didn't get that feeling, even though the government just dropped a bunch of money into my checking account. When I did an acquisition and saved a bunch of jobs, I liked it. It was fun, but I didn't feel alive. And I realized I want to keep hitting that button. How do I feel alive? So I would highly suggest look at your happiness in your routine, but where do you have that amazing, like, holy crap, I want to do that again? Which usually requires a big goal. There's got to be an element of risk. You got to be doing it with others. It's usually not a solo thing. And it's got to be something that you and your friends are passionate about. And so put a big burly goal on the calendar that you're not likely to make it, and then just go for it. And even if you don't make it, you're at least closer. So that'd be the second part of that.
You'll be
defining your future.
Exactly. Yeah, it's another exercise Finn had us do that reminds me of that is he had everybody sit down and write in extreme detail, what does your perfect day look like? And it could be at any point in time. It could be tomorrow. It could be 5 years, 20 years from now. And each of us read it together as well. What was our perfect day look like? And just the level of detail, I'm really thinking and having to think through that and put it on paper, advances that whole thinking as well. So, well, awesome, Absolutely. Man. Well, thank you so much. A lot of great takeaways and sharing the journey through your whole process is, I think a lot can be learned, and others that may be in a similar place, whether we're trying to refine an existing operation and get it in place or want to launch a new idea. You kind of share both of those paths. Where can everybody follow the van and its next adventure? Yeah, anybody wants to kind of keep up with you from speaking or kind of the adventure races and stuff you're doing? Where can they find you?
Sure. So we'll start off with Support Services of Virginia. This is the company that supports people with disabilities. You can find us at www.ssvainc.org. And
you still just say www.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. So it'll work either way. You don't need that. So ssvainc.org. If you're interested in adventure and finding your passion in the outdoors, It's thisabilityadventures.com. So it's a play on words with, it's not disability, because in the world of disabilities, we focus on what people can do, not on what they can't. So we call the company This Ability, so we can focus on what they can, right? So it's thisabilityadventures.com. You can also find us on This Ability Racing on YouTube and Facebook. And we put out tons of content because we want people to be inspired to go outside and do stuff. And so we take multiple GoPros from multiple angles. I kick it over to Kathleen, and she's amazing at producing videos. And so we have a ton of just adventure videos, whether it be pack rafting or mountain biking or rock climbing, just anything at REI, we're doing it. And she puts together some really good videos with some music from local artists in Virginia. So if you're, instead of Netflix, head over to our YouTube channel and watch some stuff. We just crossed Florida for 72 hours, and we have a 4-part series of videos going through that experience just 2 weeks ago or something. So it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And for those that can't, they can go live vicariously.
There you go.
Watching the videos. So well, appreciate it, man. Always great having you. Rounding out a bunch of great examples on automate and delegate, what you should not be doing and pursuing and fast tracking those personal relationships and business and your personal life as well. Got a lot of great examples. So Chip Dodd again with us. Appreciate it, sir.
And Brad, please keep doing what you're doing, man. You're changing lives. You may not know it, but you're changing lives for the better by doing your podcast and doing your company. So I appreciate it. You have made my life possible. So thank you so much for that.
This episode is sponsored by Outsource Access, the choice for entrepreneurs, small business, and busy professionals for highly talented and affordable virtual assistants and outsourcing needs. Visit outsourceaccess.com/learn to learn more and use code AUTOMATE to get $100 off their signature and risk-free assessment process.